Hello, and welcome back to Vault Talk, the show where we recap and discuss each episode of the Fallout TV show on Amazon Prime. This week, we'll be discussing Episode 5, The Past. I've got a lot of the Fallout feed crew with me here again tonight. We have with us Andrew. Hey, Andrew.
Hola, what's up?
Oh, not much. Just excited to delve into the past. And Ray. How are you, Ray?
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy. And Will is back.
Hi. How's it going?
Hi, Will. Well, I'm so happy to have you guys here. I know we had to wait a little bit to do this episode, so thank you for your patience. And listeners, thank you for waiting too. We joked last week about how it was the shortest episode so far and our longest recording about an episode. This week is even a few minutes shorter than the ghouls were. So we'll see if we can hit 2 hours. No worries. Don't turn off your podcast app right now, but we'll see. We're going to start like we have been with a quick summary. In the past, Maximus confesses his true identity to Thaddeus. Disgusted, Thaddeus disables Maximus's power armor and leaves with Wilzig's head and CX-404. Lucy finds Maximus, and they agree to work together to retrieve the head. The pair stumble upon the ruins of Shady Sands, first capital of the new California Republic, the NCR, and Maximus's former home. In their pursuit, Maximus is injured by a cannibalistic fiend, and while searching for medical supplies in an abandoned Vault-Tec building, the two accidentally fall into Vault 4. Meanwhile, back in Vault 33, Council President Betty Pearson is elected as overseer by a 98% majority. Norm hacks Vault 32's central computer and finds that every overseer of Vault 32 and 33 originally came from Vault 31, including his father. Betty orders that Vault 32 be repopulated by 33, once cleared of the deceased dwellers. So that's what we're going to get into this episode. There are basically two kind of story arcs. We have Brotherhood, or Maximus together with Lucy. And then we have Back in the Vault. So we've got no ghoul action this episode.
Yeah, and last episode we had no VOS, right? Like no Maximus, I believe. So
Right,
they're really sort of diving into the stories a little bit more.
Last episode really flowed, and this one too. Do you think having only 2 stories instead of 3 or 4 is easier for the storytelling or makes it move faster?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah,
It
I would
could
have to
be.
think so. Yeah.
And also, while we are on it, just because you had mentioned, we talked about before that Jonathan Nolan, right, he directed the first 3 episodes.
Mhm.
Well, we didn't mention last week that episode was directed by Daniel Gray Longino.
Mhm.
You know, so I just thought we'd mention who's directing these other episodes. And he's known for, well, a bunch of things, but he did some directing of Portlandia and Billions, which is a Showtime series. And then that one was written by Kieran Fitzgerald.
Right.
But this episode was directed by Claire Kilner, who directed many things, including The Wedding Date and recently House of the Dragon, some episodes. You know.
Oh, really?
on that,
HBO's
yes.
House of the Dragon. Okay.
Yeah.
I did think it was neat how they were switching directors and writers. And in fact, from here on, last episode on, they have a different writer and director every episode.
Yeah. And this one was written by Carson Mell, who wrote some for Silicon Valley, in Eastbound and Down, Another Evil.
So that's actually really cool, Will. Yeah, we might be able to catch some similarities with writing style. The thing about a show like this with showrunners is I think every writer brings their own flair, but ultimately the showrunners kind of determine the plot and the writers kind of fill in the details.
I think it's funny. Like 2 things that stood out to me was the Eastbound and Down, and I forget all of a sudden the other one you mentioned, but you mentioned 2 distinct comedies in there. So I think it's important that they included comedy writers into the writing room.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty awesome that they did that, which is very important for the sort of dark humor of Fallout. So that's awesome that they're including comedy writers too.
That is a really good point. The 2 showrunners are known for comedy and drama respectively too, as their primary thing. So they've got that kind of measured all the way through. That's really neat.
Yep, good stuff, Will. Thanks. Well, what was the last thing we saw before this episode? Was that the ghoul on the ground? And
we saw
he
him
was watching
falling asleep.
the TV. Yeah.
Oh, he was inside. He had already done all the drugs. And
Yeah,
stuff.
he was in LaLa Land. It's funny, at the end of last episode, with this episode being titled The Past, I was thinking before the rewatch, we're going to get the ghoul's backstory. We're going to get all his sliding into his past. But no.
He was watching a movie about himself. I remember.
Instead, he's not even in it.
Right. Yeah.
He had to sleep it off for quite a while. He went on
Right.
quite the vendor. But okay, so for the episode itself, starting out, we've got some good time with what are we calling them? Thadimus?
Oh.
We need a couple name for those two, Thaddeus and Maximus. So
Oh, then I think they're about to break up though, Jess.
it was tragic.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because as we get towards the end of this episode, obviously it's Maximus and Lucy are hanging out. And I was like, okay, this is a fun couple, right? And you kind of root for them. And we had seen before that they had like this little spark or something, like an interest. But I like this duo of Maximus and Thaddeus a lot. They're great.
Yeah, they really are. They're great together. And I wish we had more of that because this one is a little bit darker in overall tone, I think. They're laughing, they're joking, they're celebrating that victory we saw at the end of episode 3. They got the head on Cloud 9. All these knights sent out, because there were multiple knights sent out to different locations, and they're the ones who got the head. Thaddeus wasn't even supposed to be on the trip, so he's celebrating his first successful venture as a squire. They get that spirit of brotherhood happening. Very, very fraternal. And Thaddeus says, we've got this victory. I've helped you. Now that I'm your squire, let's make it official, and you should brand me. And Maximus like, it really hurts. But Andrew, you do the power armor voice so good.
I don't know. It was I can't know.
It's like
On the spot.
Put you on the spot.
I don't like the Kylo Ren voice modulator thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I do like your name there, Maxidius or whatever you said for the two. Oh, Thadimus. Yeah, that sounds much better. But Thaddeus gives us a little name for them in this scene when he's talking. It's like, yeah, we got the head. And he's like, Thaddeus and Titus, the T-boys. So
yeah, well, R.I.P. to the T-boys because it's not about to last. So Thaddeus convinces Maximus to brand him, Knight Titus. So he puts his hand in the fire, brands him, and that's also the T on the power armor too, gets that brand on the neck. Yep. But in this moment of celebration, Max starts feeling a little guilty. Keep the lie going. And I think that this is the moment where he's gotten over the past dislike of Thaddeus. So he says, of course, there's something I ought to tell you. And
no, you shouldn't.
Well, yeah, I know. And he could have done so much better here. This is our boy. The fact that Maximus is a little bit frugal with his words sometimes, I think gets him in a lot of trouble because he opens the power armor helmet and boom, is Maximus. Of course, Thaddeus is shocked. And Thaddeus is like, what? Where's Knight Titus? And instead of saying he was mauled by a bear and died, which, duh, that's what happened. He was mauled by a Yaogwai and died.
Right. Yeah, and there's even evidence on the power armor because it's all scratched up with the Yaogwai marks.
I wanted to keep it going. I needed to continue the mission. He says,
how long have they been together?
Dead. So Thaddeus and Maximus?
Yeah. How long have they been together?
Anywhere from, I would think, 2 to 3 days.
So yeah, I guess power armor's sort of like astronaut suit. They can evacuate right in the suit. He can eat and drink right in the suit. He's not hopping out of the suit because, Thaddeus would have, if he's been with him 3 days, he must have going out of his way to keeping himself in the suit, He
was keeping himself very separate at first too, before he and Thaddeus had their victory. You could tell that he was, being very curt with him. Chances are Thaddeus thought he got out of the suit while he was sleeping, possibly. But I was thinking the same thing. So maybe it's only been 2 days. They haven't been together that long, right?
Get a good look at the back of his hands. Do all knights just have their initials on the backs of their gloves or whatever?
You could suppose that. You don't really see
for
it
branding purposes,
except for this one set. But you have to imagine that if Titus did it, they all did it.
I figured it was just ornamental, like they all had the same T. You know what I mean? It was just getting branded. It wasn't like branded with a T specifically. It's just that's the shape on the power armor for the brand.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So it just so happens that his name is Titus. Then just sheer coincidence.
It could be either way because
we don't know.
If they were going to do it as a thing everywhere, then why isn't it just the Brotherhood symbol? Maybe that's a little bit too detailed for a brand. That's a good thought.
A little too detailed. Their power armor. That's what could be more complicated than that.
But yeah, so Thaddeus isn't taking it well because he immediately says, "Well, what did you do?" And Maximus doesn't really defend himself. Well, they'll be okay with it. And Thaddeus says, "No, they're going to kill you." And he's like, "No, not if we get our story straight." Once again, Maximus acting like he has to cover things up. He didn't need to cover things up. He's made things worse for himself, like his own guilt about what happened when he was on the radio with them and now here. Just makes it.
And even the way he said he's dead, he's like, oh, he's dead. Like it's very, very like a guilty sort of thing, like almost sinister how he said it. Yeah, he definitely needs a charisma.
Well, I mean, it's because he killed him.
He did let him die. So, yeah, Thaddeus is not taking this. He starts to reach for his gun. I don't necessarily know who's the instigator here. I feel like Thaddeus started to react first, get up, reach for his gun, like he was going to do something. Or did Maximus get up first?
I think Maximus got up first, and he's like, I knew I shouldn't have trusted you. And then right when they do that, when Maximus stands up, you see Thaddeus, he's still sort of lying back on the ground. That's when he starts slipping that little key out of his pocket.
Okay, that makes sense. See, I thought Thaddeus was maybe the instigator here, but Maximus did stand up. I think you're right about that. And that might have been intimidating enough. Maximus standing up the power armor. Thaddeus like, okay, I got to do something. Anyway, they fight. Thaddeus ducks between Maximus' legs. Max is trying to stop him. Maximus stepping forward, steps on Thaddeus' foot, which, once again, not intentional. It's just Thaddeus slipping behind him, but it crushes and mangles Thaddeus' foot really hard. Thaddeus manages to get free, and now he feels like he's fighting for his life. I'm not sure what Max thinks he's going to do. I don't think either of them intended for that to happen. They were just sharing jokes around a fire. That's why Max wanted to trust him, but things really escalate fast around Maximus. And I think you can tell again, they're both just a little bit scared of the Brotherhood. They work for them, but Thaddeus was really scared of what would happen here. And if he was complicit in this, even though they have the head. But Thaddeus does the thing where he ducks around and puts the key into the power armor, into the fusion core, unlocks it, and pulls out the fusion core, which immediately freezes the power armor. And Maximus is stuck in there. From there, he grabs the head, just grabs what he can, and starts to walk away. He's like, I'm going to fix this. And
he drags the whole bag away with him.
Yeah.
It's a big giant backpack.
He grabs the whole giant bag and the head. And CX-404 follows along.
Of course, yeah.
Going with his master's head, which I was trying to figure out why does CX-404 keep bouncing like that? But then I realized, it's with the head. That makes perfect sense.
Right. And then, of course, Thaddeus has a little bit of a regret. He's like, I can't believe I let you fucking brand me.
But what are you going to do? And Maximus is, of course, begging for his life immediately. Don't leave me here. You can't do this. Because if he's fused in his power armor and he's there for long, he's going to die.
In the game, somewhere, the behavior of power armor when the fusion core is ejected, because I thought they usually popped him open. So his key thing locked it and gave him the ability to take the fusion core?
We've always been able to step out, even when our fusion core was dead, right?
Yeah, so he locked him in with that key or something, right? And under what circumstances would they invent a key that they needed to lock a knight into his armor?
I think he simply pulled out the power armor. They're changing how it works for the show, for this moment.
Yeah, because the key unlocked the fusion core and let him pull it out.
Yeah.
In game, what then happens? It pops open, right? And the person gets out, right?
Yeah, well, you shoot the fusion core on the bad guys so that they have to either they blow up or they have to get out.
Right. And like when your fusion core runs out, you move very, very slowly on auxiliary power. And then you can get out and remove the fusion core after. We don't see in the game when someone's in a suit and you pull out the fusion core, what necessarily happens. It doesn't pop open necessarily, but people can get in and out of power armor that way.
You can open power armor without a fusion core in it, right?
You can't really in 4 and 76.
You cannot?
They don't let you get in.
It makes you transfer a fusion core to it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
They don't let you get in. So, I mean...
It is there a little bit then, huh?
Technically, it is.
Another serious design flaw, right? If you can just get stuck in it like that.
Yeah. Suffocating, it seems, right? Or overheating or something, right? Oh, I mean, we're not there yet, but...
Well, he's just locked in a can without power and unable to move, and any built-in circulation or systems are all powered down. But keep in mind, they also changed how power armor worked in 4 and 76. Before that, you didn't...
His pee bag is long full.
Before that, it lasted a long, long time.
Filling his boots now.
Oh, gosh. I was thinking about that, too, when he does step out around Lucy. Was like their stench. But we're about to get to that.
Oh, ripe. Yeah, totally.
So he is begging for his life, and Thaddeus is ignoring him and moving on. And I don't know if he tells him to go F himself, but I feel like he pretty much does. It's a bad situation. And he crushed Thaddeus' foot. And He boys, RIP, they broke up already. So we get a little fade, like he's been in there for a couple hours, maybe overnight.
At least, yeah, because it is night, and then it's daylight for the next scene.
Right. So it's been at least 6 to 8 hours, maybe a little more. And you see roaches coming up and crawling on him, and God, what a nightmare.
You hear the chittering.
Yeah, you wouldn't think rad roaches are that scary. Like in game, they're not, but they're tenacious. Like being locked down when a roach is using those incisors on you, as we heard about that second episode there with Wilzik. And one of them jumps on the side and he's trying to come in through the side of the armor, like right into his side during the exposed area. The other one's up on his chest, heading towards his face. And of course, Maximus saying, not there, because he's about to be burrowed into through his belly. And it'll be slow. Like it'll be very, very slow.
Yeah.
And painful while he dies of starvation. But then you see the roaches explode in a bunch of goo. And Lucy is coming up, but Lucy doesn't look like we've seen her before. I mean, she looks kind of like she did at the end of last episode, where she's battle worn, but she's still got the armor on that she got from the Super Duper March. She's still got the leather straps, the leather armor buckled up, and she is not doing well. She looks angry, and she thinks she recognizes him. And she asks, hey, is that you, the one from Philly? And he says yes, and they start to have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and she just goes right up. Like she has a familiarity with the armor, because she goes right up before she even asks him that, and just opens his faceplate. She knew how to open the faceplate to even talk to him. And
To let him breathe.
Is that you? Yeah.
She read the manuals.
Yeah.
When she shot the roaches, but also there was one on the ground that she just stomped the living crap out of.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. Just stomp.
Yeah,
This is why I'm saying she's angry. You can sense this is not Lucy the way we've seen her before. She is not having it right now.
I hate it up here.
Yeah, like, I was thinking, gosh, the impression I got when she came walking up and then stomping on the rad roach is that she's still badass right now.
That's what I'm saying. So she says, was that you? And she opens the faceplate so he can breathe. And they start having more of a conversation. He's like, please let me out. And she says, I want to. You might have the lines written down while I see you looking. But I want to.
Had a bad day.
Yeah, I really want to trust you.
Yeah.
I've had a rough week.
Well, that's a good time marker for us, too. We don't necessarily know if she's saying she's out of the vault for a week, but that's a good time marker. If you include the week starting with the vault being invaded, raided, her dad taken, and then leaving, yeah, that would be like maybe 5 days outside the vault and the 2 days when it happened. But I completely sympathized with her because it has been really rough. But then she starts to, you can see that she's holding it together barely because she starts to puke up bile and all that. He recognized immediately as radiation sickness. He's like, you're sick. You're sick. I've got Radaway in got Radaway in my sleeve. And if you let me out, I can help you. He's bargaining. But it's good bargaining. It's for her own health as well as his. And she doesn't know. She doesn't want to. And he's like, look, you're going to pass out soon. You're going to die. I'm going to die. Or we can trust each other. And so she does end up letting him out. Like you said, she knows exactly how armor works. He tries to start to explain it to her. She's like, shut up, night boy. I got this.
I got it.
Yeah. And I mean, she was a history teacher. She taught American history. So she did a lot of studying in the vault. So it makes sense that she knows a bit about power armor. She lets him out and then looking and immediately recognizes some of the tempered lining and stuff.
More than he did. She was like telling him about that model of power armor.
Yeah, she's saying, oh, this was released after the Anchorage War. And she's like talking about the tempered lining and all that stuff. And yeah, and she had read about them a lot in the engineering manuals and stuff in the vault. Yeah. So excited to see it.
I kind of like the connection there, though, because when Maximus first sees the power armor, he asks Knight Titus about the tempered lining, too, when they're in the vertibird. So you see a little parallel there, that these two have stuff in common. Oh, but she does. Another thing we didn't get yet. She asked him his name before she lets him out. Mm-hmm. And he's there kind of frozen for a minute. And then he says, Knight Titus. So once again, our boy messing up.
Digging deeper.
And you kind of get why, because he just said his real name and identity to somebody last night. And it completely backfired on him. But this is different. He hasn't been lying to her yet. This is a new lie. Messed up.
I know he's supposed to be like one of our lead, like sort of just one of the characters we're supposed to relate to or something. I cannot stand this character, and his first instinct just to lie his way out of everything, whereas it's just super frustrating.
He grows on me as the show goes on, but he was the one that I didn't jive with right away either. And I mean, I still don't, because like I said, he does make these errors. It's not that he's unintelligent, but he doesn't trust people. And I think he's very socially awkward, a bit uneducated, and
yet sort of wise beyond his years at the same time, with statements like everyone's trying to save the world, they just can't agree on how, right? And did he recycle that from something he read, or he didn't pull that out of his ass?
No, I think these are deep thoughts he has. I think he's slow to say too much. Maybe he's got a lot going on in his head and just has trouble getting it out.
But that seems like a pamphlet that has not been referenced anywhere besides him. Like he actually okay.
I think that's original. I mean, it's one of my favorite lines in the show. But
no, totally, it's like the theme of the show. Yeah.
But anyway, Lucy passes out here, and so then the scene kind of ends. He tries to catch her. He moves her over towards the pillar, and the scene switches over back to Norm and Chet. We last left them. They found out about Vault 32, and they were in the Overseer's terminal, and they're heading back. So now they're working their way out still, after learning about the Pip-Boy and such. And following the trail of blood and bodies, they see that the Vault dwellers who were there and had been attacking each other, the ones that aren't dead here, there are some in the hallway out in the way to Vault 31. Some of the Vault dwellers were scrabbling and trying to get in over there.
I don't know if this is an appropriate time. I need someone to inform me on what the fuck is going on with the other two vaults. Is everyone dead in both of them?
We'll get to that later.
Vault 31.
Yeah, we're still in speculation territory. But right now, we know Vault 32 and Vault 33 seem to be basically the same, except something went horribly wrong in 32.
Who was the marriage thing with? Was that 32, right?
Yeah.
This one was 32. Yep. But her dad, previously was 31. Stephanie, who was married to Bert, was 31. Was now having the baby. Yep. So
31. Okay.
They've been trading between all the vaults, or at least it seemed like they were trading between all the vaults.
Okay.
Sometimes people, sometimes stuff. But they're finding people trying to get into 31, and Norm is speculating, why were they trying to get in there? Chet says, I don't know. All I know is we're leaving.
And there's graffiti on the wall that says, we know what's in there.
Yep.
And there's all the people, like you said, they had sledgehammers and like blow torches and all that stuff trying to get to the door.
It's interesting. We understand because of the revelations that are coming as far as maybe why they're trying to get into 31, but there's still a lot of stuff we don't know. And even by the end of the series, there's stuff we don't know about what happened in the vault, right? So go back to their own vault. They get back to Vault 33, wandering through, looking a little bit grubby and guilty and suspicious. And they walk by Betty, the council president there. She says, oh, boys, how are you? Where have you been? They were kind of ahead of time trying to be like, don't look suspicious. And of course, immediately they're asked.
Potatoes.
Yeah, we were planting potatoes. And she's like, oh, okay, run along then.
That's it. Right.
And the potatoes, it took me the longest time. Did y'all ever think that potatoes were supposed to be potatoes, or did y'all always know that those were tomatoes?
Well, they are potato-tomato hybrids.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's why they're like red and bulky like a tomato, but they're harder and grow in like a potato.
All right, still learning. Okay.
Yeah, potatoes have always kind of been between the two.
Always makes me think of Tamaco from The Simpsons.
They are questioned, and then they're kind of wandering off like, phew. But you can already tell, and Betty gives the side eye. Like previously I mentioned, Betty was a little sus, and we're seeing it more and more. In fact, this episode, we see it a lot.
Yeah, she starts to look almost evil.
Side-eye, dude.
It's like very sinister.
She knows they're up to something because she suspected Norm when she talks about the whole what clever boys get up to.
Oh, yeah, right. You're too clever for your own good.
Yeah, and she knows that Norm is going to dig into stuff. And in fact, she's been giving him breadcrumbs and clues, maybe, either setting him up to deal with the prisoners or something else. But here, she's suspicious, and I think after this, she probably goes and checks what happened in Vault 32 herself, not long after, or contacts someone who does. But that's the end of this scene. Do you guys see anything else about this one you wanted to mention?
I watched Deadpool this week.
Ooh, cool.
And she's funny.
Yeah.
She is. What's her character name over there? Nell or something?
I don't remember. I forget. It's like roommate or something. This is funny.
So it comes back to Lucy and Maximus. And Maximus is kind of going through his stuff and making preparations to leave. And Lucy is waking up
She has a Radaway IV going through her.
Yeah, hanging overhead with the Radaway coming down, and she's definitely looking a little better, like she's getting stronger.
That looks like saline drip or chemo or something. It's weird how they presented it here.
Oh, and that's kind of the way that we would think Radaway would actually work. Because there are a few times when you see it in a clinic or a med center when it's not on the table, that it is up on an IV style drip. In the games, even.
It's in the bag that hangs. Then why is it instantaneous effect though? That's the only problem.
Well, in the game, you're right. It's over a few seconds. But in reality, in the game world, I think it would take longer. Though we see that stim packs they do, or stim packs are pretty close to right away.
Yeah.
And so Radaway would be similar, but I think it would be supposed to be injected like that as a drip.
Yeah. And we don't know exactly how much time passed. It's still just daylight. They switched scenes and they came back. Right?
Yeah, it might not be that long at all. And she may have needed extra Radaway because she was getting pretty radiation sick. That would take us probably 2 or 3 to flush.
It'll weigh 2 strength points, I bet.
Exactly. But so Maximus is getting ready to go, and he says, okay, I have to go after my squire took something that belongs to the Brotherhood. I have to get it back. And he's starting to walk away, but Lucy, of course, says, we should stick together. We can help each other. And then she says, I'm after a head. And given that it seems everyone else on the Wasteland that I've been running into is also after it, I have to imagine that you are too. And Maximus doesn't really confirm or deny, but he stops, looks, and he kind of nods imperceptibly, but it's Maximus. You know what I mean? He's stone-faced. But you can see that he's like, okay, I'm listening, and kind of nods. She suggests that we should work together. Does she say she has the ability to track it? Yes,
she does.
She's got her Pip-Boy thing, right?
And because first she asks him if the Brotherhood has more T60s, because that's what she's interested in, is getting more knights for her cause.
Yeah, and so she says that she has the ability to track it. And if the Brotherhood could help her, if they get the head back, then the Brotherhood can help her send some more knights to help rescue her father. And so that way, they're kind of compromising. She's getting what she needs. She's still helping her father, but she's helping Maximus get the head. So it's a deal that will benefit both of them. But now, of course, Maximus doesn't have that kind of pull with the Brotherhood, but I mean, especially in his current situation. Yeah, even if he was a knight, he wouldn't necessarily be able to commit. But yeah, he essentially agrees to it and says, okay, we can do that. And they shake. Now, when they shake, you actually put a note here, Andrew, that I thought was interesting because I watched this a couple times because it's an interesting moment. You see them kind of meeting eyes, they shake, and then the music starts playing. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Is that what it was?
Oh, the music, right, yeah.
I think is the name of the song. Is that it?
No, it's that battle hymn, whatever.
Battle Hymn of the Republic, I think it's called.
Thank you. Okay, that's the name. But they're trying to show it as an iconic moment when the Vault Dweller and the Knight kind of come together and they shake hands and form an agreement. And as we know, that sparks kind of flew between them. When they first saw each other, even here, they're helping each other. We're moving from Thadimus over to Maxy. Maybe not quite yet. So from there, do we switch back over to the vault, or was there anything else?
Well, there is just that little exchange where when she is trying to convince him, she talks about how it is in the vault and how just the worst thing is that someone can do is to forget to thank you. So she's trying to convince him about trust and all that stuff. And then she said something like, it sounds like a nice place to live. And it is. And you could sort of see this seed of envy, maybe, or whatever, that she got to grow up in a vault.
Because he thought vaults were full of monsters. And she's like, no, they're
right.
people like
they
me.
said that. Yeah. He's like, well, that's what people said, monsters. But and when it switches this scene, Andrew, y'all were just talking about the battle hymn of the Republic, the glory, glory, hallelujah. When it switches, it goes over to the Vault 33. It's that same song. It's just lower in the background and like done differently, like a different sort of style of it.
But it's still the same song? Well, it makes sense to be somewhat patriotic because they are starting to engage in one of our sacred patriotic processes here in America.
Democracy in action.
Democracy in action and the ballot box, yes. They're in line at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all going in line. And I thought this was funny that Betty was over the intercom. Like, we didn't even know that she was running up until now, but she's getting all this like intercom time while people are voting. Meanwhile, Reg and Woody, as far as we know, just put up a few posters.
Yeah, Reg and Woody were both running. I completely thought the same thing, Will, that she's the one there telling people about let's go and vote, your patriotic duty, all that. So yeah, she's getting to be inspiring and literally in their ears while they're going to the ballot box.
Well, the best scene was in line.
Yes, Davy.
The Davy, yeah, right. He's talking to Woody, right?
Reg.
Yeah. Yep.
Or
Reg.
Reg.
Oh, was it Reg? Yeah.
Reg. And finally, Reg's like, "Who am I kidding?" Ends up voting for Betty anyway.
But it was the Davy thing was really funny. A very sitcom moment where he's like subtle at first. He's like, feels good. Hey, you ran a good campaign, kid, blah, blah, blah. And then he keeps going and he starts to say, but in a time like this, we need someone with experience. And Reg is, he's being polite, even though it's obvious.
We vote in private for a reason.
Yep, you're allowed to
And then
vote.
Davy has to come out and say, well, just like I'm voting for Betty. Like, I got that. But of course, as a final thing, you get the headspace that a lot of the vault dwellers are in this situation where they're all thinking about Betty's been overseer before, as we found out, which I don't know that we knew before this. Did we know last episode?
I don't think so.
But it's relatively new information that Betty had previously been overseer. She's not just council president. That Betty's running, but yeah, did she really bother campaigning? No, but she was just everywhere while the two were campaigning. She was actually talking to everybody.
She doesn't need to campaign. She's got the microphone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yeah, he goes into the ballot box and who am I kidding?
Yeah, Betty's smart. She knows all you have to do is control the media.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. So yeah, he doesn't vote for himself. Everybody seems to be voting for Betty. And as we find out later, she got 98% of the vote.
Yeah, including Reg's, right? Yes.
Probably Woody's too.
Yeah. Right.
Have they revealed how many people are in the vault?
No, we're thinking there's probably about 200 per vault here. In Vault 32, Vault 33.
I don't know this vault specific, but I do know for a fact they talk about 200 people in the vault in an episode coming up, not to spoil that. And at one point in this episode, there was a large turnout at one of the gathering. And I was curious because, we talk about how Bethesda always does that thing where they have a small number of people that you always see to represent a big giant number. But this one, I counted 62.
Oh, wow.
So 620 then, right?
Well, not that many in this vault.
But also that line to go vote was pretty lengthy. Like it was going on for a while and then you could look and you could see out the vault window down the hall there.
And they weren't all people we recognize. Maybe if we look closely, this is one of the scenes that really sets up there are more people in the vault than we're seeing at any given time. That line really did stretch. And it's the classic kind of cafeteria or schoolroom too in the vault. That's pretty large. It's got the big windows onto the vault hallway and the line wraps around. Yeah, I got the same thing from this scene. It seems to indicate there are a lot of people.
Very cool.
So after this, we're switching pretty quick here between these scenes. But now we're back to Lucy and Maximus walking along the train tracks. I liked this because finally, Maximus is being a little bit more like he was starting to be with Thaddeus. Like he's being a little more open. They're talking. Lucy is she's letting down her guard pretty quick. Like she immediately, despite the fact that she was in such a bad way, you can tell she wants to trust a little bit. So yeah, they're talking like normal people. I like that. And so after a few questions, she mentions, for instance, the bombs dropping. Does she go to what happened the last 200 years first or the bombs first? Do you remember?
It's that they're just walking. That's the first thing she says is she's like, can I ask you a favor? Just what happened in the last 200 years? Just like a quick rundown.
Well, yeah. And does she say 200 years since the bombs dropped? And then that's when Maximus said that it hadn't been that long.
He's a bit confused by this because Maximus, like I said, I don't feel like he's the most educated about what's going on outside of his little bubble. And then she's like, since bombs dropped, and he says the bombs dropped when I was a kid.
Do you think he thinks that she's talking about his event from his childhood? Do you think that's what he's thinking about?
That's the only bomb he knows is the one that blew up Shady Sands.
They never talked about the Great War?
Well, again, this is Maximus.
He was a little kid when that happened. And we don't know what happened to him between the time that he was 6 or 7 when he was in the refrigerator.
I assume he was in some sort of brotherhood, like developmental child program, right?
I didn't get that impression.
I just thought he was a kid from
feel
Shady
like he was
Sands.
on his own. I thought he was on his own for a bit in between and then eventually hooked up with the brotherhood. But I think it took a little while.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been the low man on the totem pole.
At the Brotherhood, it seems like he's only been there a year or two, maybe a little longer, but he's just...
Or a little less.
Yeah, he is definitely low man on the totem pole.
He's brand new there.
And he's less educated. Even if he's not brand new, he's one of the newest.
Because that was one of the conversations they had with Thaddeus was, when he was asking him, tell me something about my squire. And he said that he was getting beat up all the time. And then Maximus came along and he said, hey, why don't we beat up on him instead?
And if that happened 10 years earlier, that would be quite a long time for nobody new coming in. Like,
Yeah.
because when he was kid in the fridge there in the flashback, we're going to get in a little bit. I mean, he looks 6, maybe, much like Lucy probably was, maybe 8 to 10 at most. So, yeah. And now he's probably 20. Like, you get the idea that he's supposed to be late teens, early 20s, for both of them. Lucy is probably 21 to 22. I would guess, and Max probably about the same. They don't specify, but when we see that flashback with him, and then when she's also talking about the famine and what happened when her mother died, she said she was 6. So based on dates we're going to get to in the future, if that was like around 2077, and we're currently in 96, that would have been 19 years earlier, so that would make her 25. But if it was more like 2281, I meant 22. But if it was actually 2281, which is when we know that around that time, shortly after New Vegas, is when things were destroyed.
Yeah.
Then that would put her 6 at that time, which was 15 years earlier, which would make her 21. So she was between 21 and 25, and he's probably between 20 and 23, looking at the ages.
All right. Well, how old's the ghoul?
The ghoul?
270,
right?
Yeah.
Or who
And
knows?
how old was he?
Or over than that, yeah.
When
we
the
don't know.
bombs fell, he had to be at least
mean, he was-
35, not 40.
Yeah, early 30s.
So that would put him, 240 now? 250?
I was joking, but good job.
We care about these things. We're numbers people.
Diagrams, yes.
So we get the little flashback to Lucy remembering her mother again, talking about her age and kind of how the sun felt like the sun and all that. But I like the back and forth, just them kind of being affable, Lucy asking questions. Back to where we were. Maximus does mistake what she's saying about the bombs as they dropped him as a kid, but it's an abstract. The bombs falling are a real thing in his life that happened when he was a child. So that's
Yeah.
what he thinks of first.
Yeah, and because when he says that, when they dropped when I was a kid or whatever, she's like, "Oh, is that what your brotherhood tells you?" Like a little bit condescending there, and then he's like, "Well, you're the one that lived in a box your whole life."
Are
Yeah.
all the weapons and armor the Brotherhood possess, did those exist only at the end of the Great War, or are they still able to produce these items? Like, do you think they're still making power armor?
So that's interesting. Yes, I would say that they're able to
Still-
refabricate and
Yeah,
repurpose armor.
refurbish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
with
they're probably
guns-
not manufacturing it.
We know they were making some weapons in the pit, mostly bullets, but they were working on rebuilding, welding, remaking some weapons. But as far as we know, there's not a lot of fabrication, although the NCR got pretty sophisticated, so they may have been able to start fabricating guns again. Do you,
Well, like Raiders make all sorts of stuff and power armor, even and all that. So I'm sure Brotherhood could.
We've got workbenches. We've all made guns from scrap. And I feel like some of the people who sell guns, like in 3, Ray, what do you think? Flack and his buddy there? Or who are the two that run the weapon shop in Freeside in New Vegas? Like they were making new weapons, right?
I don't know. I think most everything was all pre-war
Mm-hmm.
because in 76 we got pipe weapons, which are obvious homemade post-war weapons. But beyond that, everything else was pre-war.
Yeah, anything that's not sort of crudely made.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Partly why the unique weapons, like the best weapons, are so rare. You get these really excellent laser rifles and other things. And they were able to build the Pridwin. They can fabricate some stuff, but it takes massive resources in order to fabricate stuff. And even that is still built
You
from
don't
other
think
things.
Pridwin existed before?
No, they built it. I'm forgetting the name of it, but didn't they build it from an old military transport, like a mix of things in the schematics?
I have no idea. I've never read a goddamn terminal.
It's a lore question, and I'm forgetting at the moment. But the Pridwin was rebuilt from parts.
Dirigibles are not great war ships, I don't think.
Not in our universe, no. So let's see. That's pretty much it. No deep revelations, but you can see a camaraderie building between them. So then we flash back over to Norm. And Norm, he's our hacker. He's got that perk, for sure. He's back in the computer.
Did they show our hacking game?
No,
Did he use the? Should have you? Why didn't they use
no,
that?
right?
They show the Robco startup, but
Use the exact fucking noise. The app that the Fallout 4 Pip Boy app that is no longer that works. I still use mine for a map occasionally when I'm playing Fallout 4, but they stole sounds directly from that. Like the
they're
sound,
classic. They're
whenever
awesome.
makes the hair stand up on my neck when I hear it for some reason. It's so cool.
But Norm is investigating his suspicions at this point. This is where he learns about the transfer 31 to 32, transfer 31 to 33, and that many of them have been elected overseer, right? This is where he finds that.
Yes, that's what he's doing. He's on the terminal when we go to this scene. Funny little thing I happened to just notice here, because we talked last time about how overseers sort of are elected differently. That this one obviously does have elections, but that some seem to be appointed maybe for life. I noticed by the overseers or the intervault personnel transfers that Norm was looking at, that all the ones that came over to 33, that they were all overseer in 4-year increments or thereabouts. So it looks like they do elections every 4 years, just like we do. Yeah, because Hank McLean was the longest running by far. So apparently they don't have term limits, because like everyone was like either 8, 12, or 4, and then Hank was working on 28 years as overseer.
Wow, that's quite a while. Now, do we think all the overseers were from Vault 31?
Don't know that, but
Yeah.
and on that list that they showed, like it was just, well, it was 31. It was just all.
What Norm was looking up was all transfers. And I think he was looking up transfers
Right.
31 to 33 and maybe 31 to 32. He managed to get info on both, but
all communications and trade between vaults 31, 32, and 33 is what he was looking.
Right. And so they were all elected overseer. Now, there might have been other overseers in between. We know that from Vault 32, for instance, when Hank reached out and talked to 32 to arrange the trade and got Lee Moldaver, that he said he was sorry to hear about that overseer, but he wasn't like so shocked or suspicious that he didn't know this person who was overseer, having come from Vault 31. So I feel like there may have been others, maybe elected in between, but possibly only when things were okay, but whenever they needed to. But definitely people from 31 guiding it.
We don't necessarily know that 31 would know all 31 people.
Right.
Not to.
Right. We know that overseers communicate back and forth. That he's talked about, Hank mentions that early on when they communicated, and Betty does later this episode, mentions she talked with the overseer of 31. So we do know that the overseers in the vaults are able to communicate through their terminal, supposedly. So after that, Betty has been elected, and she's celebrating. She comes out, and we got more Jell-O cake. A big old wiggly Jell-O cake mountain. This one was particularly tasty. It's a little taller Jell-O cake, got the little wiggle. And people are congratulating her and getting the cake, and she cuts the slice for Norm. I'm surprised they didn't cut their own. It was a little bit of a kind of messy cut. I'm like, really, Betty?
Hard to get a clean cut of Jell-O cake.
It wiggles. As an aside, have any of you had Jell-O cake?
No.
Not like that. What I refer to as that looks more like a Jell-O mold almost. The Jell-O cake was growing up that we had was just like Jell-O mixed in with like loosely mixed in, so it would form like streaks and stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of Jell-O cake I've had, where it was mostly like regular cake, but just moister.
Yeah.
Like just very moist.
This looks like my Aunt Nancy's Christmas Jell-O mold, you know?
I love Jell-O mold.
But it's sort of like set on top of another cake, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting hybrid between a Jell-O mold and a Jell-O cake, and apparently the Vault's favorite food. They have a slightly awkward moment because Betty knows that Norm has been up to things. Norm is hitting his really growing suspicion phase, where he wasn't suspicious of Betty before. He was just kind of wondering what happened over in Vault 32 and didn't want to get in trouble. But at this point, with his suspicion starting to be confirmed, Betty being elected overseer and him finding that list, now he's suspicious of her. So, yeah, they just kind of stare awkwardly. And he says, congratulations on being elected.
Sorry,
thank you.
Sorry to backtrack on this. Did they say Jell-O cake and use the brand name Jell-O?
Yep.
They did.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if they worked out a deal there or something. Jell-O cake is not a staple food item in the Fallout games.
But in 50s, 60s culture, like we're talking about, Jell-O molds and Jell-O cake were maybe more common.
Absolutely. Right.
And so they're bringing that forward. I feel like Betty, she knows Norm is looking into things, and I don't think she's suspicious of him, but she's just kind of calculating what he's up to. Do you think she knows completely what he's been up to at this point?
No, I don't think so. But she does seem suspicious. And Norm definitely is acting in a way to make her suspicious intentionally. Like
Mhm.
when he just comes up, congratulations over here. Like he does give that awkward moment for a while, and he wants that moment to be awkward. It
Yeah,
seems
a
like.
little bit. I feel like she wants to bring him in though too. Because like she said last episode, he is the last McLean in the vault. And if she worked with his father, Hank McLean,
Mm.
you would think that she kind of wants to keep him in the fold. And maybe whatever's happening, maybe groom him to be the next overseer if things don't improve.
Are you kidding? That woman's got a mirrored monitor of everything that he's looking at. She knows each and every move he's
She
doing.
knows.
She is setting him up to do this stuff.
I'm thinking back now to when he first expressed, like at that meeting with Steph started looking at him, and Steph
Mhm.
talked to him, and it's like, oh, you're the right thing or whatever. Is talking to him.
So is she
Like,
encouraging
Norm,
him
you're the-
to? Do you think in some way she's planting the seed that gets him to go check out Vault 32? Or was it simply she was
I don't
encouraging
know.
him to maybe handle the prisoners? Or
Yeah, I think it was the prisoners she was
Mhm.
most interested in.
But yeah, we learn in a little bit here that Steph is from 31 also, and so maybe it's more like these 31 people possibly just trying to manipulate him, right? Could they be working together a little bit with that?
I can definitely see that.
I definitely don't trust the one-eyed woman. That's never trust a woman with an eye patch.
See, I've been so trusting of Steph until this. We're about to get to Steph. And suddenly going from like Lucy's best friend, and she's got a little bit of a streak, but you can't blame her. I mean, they killed Bert. You can't blame her for being vindictive like Norm.
Yeah, stuck a fork in her eye.
In some ways, she seems like the more normal one. Her and Betty and Norm seem a little bit less sitcom-y, a little bit less like, oh, shucks, Mayberry kind of, than a lot of the rest of the Vault. We talked about how Vault tech indoctrinated they all are. But we go back over to Max and Lucy walking together. And they're still chatting. Lucy has her questions about what's going on. And suddenly they stop. They come to a bridge. And there are people across the way. And the whole feeling changes from them being affable and relaxed to suddenly distrust, because the people across the bridge look suspicious. People meeting in a location like this with nobody else around is very dangerous in the Wasteland. And that's one of the things that differs from the show to the games a bit, because we meet, well, I was about to say cricket, because like Will's going to mention, this is very cricket-esque coming up. But like Trash Can Carla, any of the people, we meet people on the road all the time in the games. And we, as the player character, aren't necessarily immediately suspicious of them. They're either orange and they start shooting at us and then they're our enemy, or they're green or blue or amber and they don't start shooting at us and they're a friend. It's much easier to tell in the game. But if you were really in the Wasteland, yeah, until you knew a raider was a raider, you'd be very suspicious. And I suppose we get that some. Like when you're sneaking, Ray, well, I shouldn't ask you actually because you're more likely to kill them. But
yeah, those two would already be laying on the ground before they ever saw me.
But when you're sneaking in game and you're coming up and you see the back of somebody, you're like, I don't know if they're going to be friend or foe. And so, you have to decide if you're going to take that shot or not. And usually I don't. Usually I see if they turn orange on me when I come out of stealth, unless I know that they're a bad guy, then I will.
Yeah. If you play with the HUD off to where you're not getting the markers, you very quickly adopt a shoot first.
Especially if you don't have like a morality karma system going on.
I've had plenty of those experiences where like I don't know and I can't tell, and I'm like, all right, maybe I better just make a little pause here, right, in case, because I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna treat these people like they're all friendly,
quick
and
save.
then all of a sudden it goes south real quick. It's like, all right, yeah.
I do that in
Reload.
game all the time. I was in Point Lookout earlier this week. Not to talk too much gameplay, we'll do that later on the Fallout feed. But I was in Point Lookout and I'm seeing smugglers and they're not orange. I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is going to be a nice smuggler. So I get out of stealth. I walk up to them and I'm like, are you going to shoot me? They shoot me. But I try to always give them a chance. It's maybe not the brightest. But anyway, I feel like that's me being Lucy in the circumstances and Ray being Maximus.
Yes.
So making that choice like, hey, I know what happens here. This is dangerous, this is bad. We got to be ready to take them out, or maybe preemptively take them out without even knowing, which that brings you to like, are we the baddies? Well, yeah. Honestly, Maximus, if you took a gun and you shot them right now, you would be the baddie, 100%. But They say, "Are you armed?" And Maximus lies and says, "We're not." And she yells back, "Are you armed?" And they say, "No." Lucy's like, "What do you mean? We have guns. We're armed." He's like, "Give me your gun." Like, basically tell both sides are probably lying.
She just keeps tucking it back further behind her. So
Both sides don't trust. And he says, "There's nobody else around here. No one's going to know if we're attacked. They have to be ready." I don't know if Maximus is going to be preemptive here if he had the gun, or if he's simply going to be threatening them the whole way across. What do you guys think he would have done? Did you think about that at all?
No, I don't think it. I didn't think he was going to be preemptive. I thought he just wanted to have it in the ready in his hand.
Yeah. Okay, that's where I was too, but I just wanted to be sure. He hasn't had an easy life, and he's very suspicious.
I didn't get the impression that he wanted to draw first blood. He just wanted to have the gun in case shit went wrong.
Mhm. So Lucy steps forward, and she's going to try what she did back in Philly again. Roll a speech check, try to negotiate, try to pull out that vault tech training. And this time she does a bit better. You
We're
know,
all a little tense here, right? Yeah.
First she does a speech, and I think they yell back, like, "What the F are you talking about?"
Failed.
But she gets her point across. She kind of rewords and gets them going. "Raise your hands. Let's just walk by each other. We don't want to fight each other." And they're okay with that because they don't want to get shot either. Nobody, either side wants to get shot.
Yeah.
This is just a tense situation.
Yeah. Well, at first they're like, "Well, we already said we don't have any weapons," but she's like, "Can we just please give it a try?" And just
Because everybody knows everybody's lying.
they eventually sort of go with it.
So they're walking past with arms up. It's working. You get some nice music going on. It's like a little ballet. I really liked this scene. Finally, Lucy's got her negotiation has worked. We're going to get things done the right way. And as they go across, Kid Rock and Cricket are like looking in their eyes, and they're looking back. And once they actually pass each other, you get Cricket. Doesn't she look exactly like Cricket? Well,
She looks exactly like
Oh,
Cricket. Yeah.
To-
Her name
to
is
the
Rinka.
every detail.
I had to pause it to like see if this was, or I looked in the menu to see if that character was actually named Cricket. I was that positive it was Cricket. Yeah. And then of course I get all excited and I was telling you guys, "Hey, Cricket's in the show." Not really, but and I sent in the pictures and yeah, everyone just already knew. That like it took me several rewatches to figure it out, but it is perfect down to like the little hole in her beanie above her head, everything. Yes.
yeah, that little hole really sells it. Like, I thought that. And I saw the red under the
Yeah.
eyes and the hood up. I'm like, oh, yeah, she looks like Cricket. But anyway, Cricket gets a look at that Pip-Boy. You get the whole eyes, like, looking at them, just thinking, evaluating. And then she's the Pip-Boy and looks closer. They see valuables. They're going to steal now. So they go for their guns. Maximus sees what they're doing, realizes, and grabs Lucy's gun and gets a shot in.
That dude fires or pulls his gun first.
Yep.
He actually pulls his gun first.
Yep.
Yeah. Maximus is able to pull Lucy's gun out, shoot him before, or no, is it her first?
Yeah, it's her first. So it's Maximus sees
Yeah.
them going for their guns, and he grabs Lucy's gun and pulls out to shoot. And yeah, the guy did finish going for his gun first. But Maximus gets off the first shot, gets the girl. Sometimes the guy shoots over at him, hits Maximus. Then Maximus takes out the guy right in the forehead. So yeah, he is a good shot on both of these. Takes out the girl first, then he gets hit, then he takes out the guy. And the shot the guy got off on his arm, so I was thinking it probably wasn't that bad. But yeah, so he goes over and immediately starts looting them, like you do. And Lucy's like, why? Why would they do this? And
She's in shock.
right, because she's like, well, this was going to work. I mean, I totally was with her. I'm like, finally something's going right. And then it goes dead wrong again. And he says they were fiends, which now we know the Fiends as a gang in New Vegas and some of the earlier games.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah. But they're in the Fiends are not cannibals, right?
Correct.
In New Vegas?
But Cook just burns people to death. He doesn't actually eat them.
Fiends are known more for their drug addiction.
Drug use, yeah.
Yeah, they're a heavy drug use gang. But Cook does kill and burn people. And one assumes that since he's also the cook, that he might cook people too. But I don't think they actually get into that much.
No, because you don't find any human flesh in the inventories. So yeah, I don't think Cook actually eats people. None of the other fiends do either.
And Lucy just says, I hate this place. Do you think it's simply the fiends in this area? They just wanted to make it seem more extreme?
Yeah, I mean it is a completely different area. You can call people by different things.
Right. They might be different or
Yeah.
loosely associated, but
Yeah.
anyway, I just figured they were druggies, like Cricket. So Lucy is exasperated and seen. But I'm with her. I was so with her. I liked this scene a lot. So we cut back to the vault, and Woody is sadly looking at his poster.
Poor Woody.
And it's a nice poster. And it says Woody for Overseer. But he lost. So he's kind of staring sadly. He's probably going around and taking him down. But he's lost in thought. And Davy comes around. And
Davy again.
Davy, he didn't have enough rubbing it in with Reg. He's going to rub it in with Woody too, trying to make him feel better. So he comes up and he says, "You ran a good campaign." And he says, "I ran for Overseer once myself." And he lost to none other than Hank McLean.
And he sort of blames it on that Weevil famine, because I ran for Overseer myself, but that Weevil famine came.
Things were bad. That Weevil famine came. And that's the famine referenced again, because Ella, Lucy, mentioned the famine where her mother died already too. So that's been brought up twice now by Lucy, and now it's brought up by Davy too. That, that something bad happened and they elected Hank McLean. And then something bad happened again now, they elected Betty. And he mentions the slogan, you know what they say, when things look glum, vote for someone from Vault 31, which they could have workshopped that a little bit. It's catchy, but it should have been like, when things look glum, vote 31. Make it a little catchier.
Yeah.
It's the way Norm says it later, but Davey has the long version, but Norm says it shorter.
Okay, good. So you get that from Davey, and so Davey wanders off. And this, of course, cuts over to Chet and Norm chatting. And this is where Norm's talking to Chet about some of what he's discovered. I just think it's odd. Yeah, they're whispering. It's odd. I found that we keep electing people from Vault 31 Overseer because they know there's got to be something weird with 31. What were these people from Vault 32 talking about? We know the truth. We know what's in there. So
and then he says they did the exact same thing in 32. So I guess 32 had all Overseers from 31, right?
Yeah, that's why I think he was able to check the log for multiple trades on both when he was searching. And Chet, he says, well, why do people do anything? Why do they like jelly cake over apple pie? Yeah. And he's like, but don't you think it's strange? And I think Chet says, well, they have a great education system. We know Vault 31, better educated, a few more people. They've got these things in their head. They're all equal, but Vault 31's a little bit better, a little bit smarter.
They have a few more resources and stuff too.
Mm-hmm. And that's why. But, you got to wonder, is that really why? And Norm says, then why are we whispering if it's normal? Chet mentions Steph was from 31, just as Norm's standing up to keep talking. And Steph says, what? She comes out of the shower, and yeah, she's there living with him. Oh, we didn't mention that the baby is in there with him, too. Chet's shaking a rattle, the baby keeping him quiet. And Steph is apparently they're already staying together, so Steph moved quickly. But I mean, once Chet put the Mac on her, he was honor bound. She knew what she was doing a couple episodes ago, is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why this is where she first starts to feel suspicious. Because you start putting two and two together, like, oh, she's from Vault 31 too. We didn't know that till this moment. We saw her kind of manipulating Chet, and here she's spending a lot of time together. She's showering at his place. And Norm, he doesn't want to give away the game. So he just looked at Betty and, oh, aren't you from Vault 31? And says yes. And Norm very subtly says, what's it like in Vault 31? And she has to think for a minute. And she says, oh, I don't know. Maybe the mashed potatoes were a little better.
That is a pretty good thing.
Do you like good mashed potatoes? That's exactly why she says it, though, because how disarming is that? That's an easy way of saying basically the same, but this really sweet all-American thing, mashed potatoes, are better. And then he says, my dad said the same thing. And this is where you realize, okay, that statement that could have been innocuous in this circumstance now suddenly becomes suspicious too. Like they've been coached or prompted or told what to say if someone asked them about Vault 31. And so immediately, and I mean, the eye patch did make her look a little suspicious anyway, let's be honest.
Right.
But immediately she goes from Lucy's best friend over the last little bit to, wow. And then it kind of all changed. Norm steps out of the room, and then we hear Betty come over the loudspeaker. And she says, as her first edict as overseer, she will have a meeting about the future of Vault 32. You guys have anything else on this before we go back to Lucy? Okay. Oh, another question between Lucy and Maximus that we didn't mention earlier. I love when she asked, so Earth is round, so Earth is flat. Where do you guys stand on that these days?
Right.
Just that conversation where she wants to know everything. And I don't feel like she could ask a worse person than Maximus in some ways, because he's just not very forthcoming about things in general.
Is this the point where she says, okay, so the Brotherhood gathers technology
uses pre-war technology to gather pre-war technology so
Technology.
no one can have pre-war technology.
Yeah.
And Maximus says, when you put it like that this was all in the lead up to the bridge, but they were some great lines, which we needed because no Ghoul this episode. So we're missing our one-liners.
Mhm.
So now Lucy and Titus are walking together again, and they come up to the billboard, the Shady Sands billboard there. It says Shady Sands, first capital of the NCR, population 34,000 something. And she's kind of taken aback by it.
Established 2142.
Right.
Because the date is important. Yeah.
Yeah, which is after the Great War, of course. And Lucy is taken aback. And Maximus explains that this was Shady Sands, was our capital. And she said, but what about Reclamation Day? And he doesn't know what Reclamation Day is. We know, of course, it's when people in the vaults are supposed to come out. At least the vaults that had a Reclamation Day. Not every vault had, but the vaults that were supposed to emerge, they had this concept of Reclamation Day, where we will emerge from the vault. We will rebuild, reclaim, restore the America that was. And Maximus doesn't know about this. And she says, well, we always thought we'd start civilization, and it happened without us.
Yeah. She said it was the entire purpose of the vault was to come up to the surface one day and restart civilization. Like
Right.
you said. It's what keeps us all going. And it already happened without us.
And
And she's
Maximus,
just devastated.
Maximus trying to say the right thing, just says something so strange again. He's like, well, if it helps, it didn't work. Such a funny way to address that. He says, follow me. And so they're going through the outskirts of this town that's been destroyed. And they come up through the crumbling buildings onto a giant crater. And we're given to see, there's the Shady Sands Public Library sign there. And we're going to see that this is where Shady Sands was. But the center of the city, or center of town, has been destroyed as nothing but a big crater now. And Lucy says, what happened? And this is where Maximus has his line. Same thing that always happens. Everyone wants to save the world. They disagree on how. And that's so profound, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't a Great War crater then? This is
Now, this is when the bombs fell that Max was talking about.
the Shady Sands? Is that the town? What's it called?
Yep.
Yeah. Shady Sands.
This is where Shady Sands was. And she's asking what happened. He's like, the bombs fell and they blew it up. And no one survived. And this is where Maximus, kind of looking into the middle distance again, says, I did. And then he starts to wince a little bit in pain. And before they can really address this and get deeper into that, we get the little flashback of Maximus's kid in the fridge. So one assumes near where they are, in these ruins they're in right now, and like not in the crater, obviously. But before they can elaborate on it, he winces and she goes to check his wound, and the cloth he's got wrapped, he starts to pull it out, and it's blood soaked. And you realize Maximus is in a bad way. He's losing a lot of blood, and the wound that he said was just a scratch is a lot worse than he had let on. If you look at his jumpsuit, what do you call the suit the Brotherhood wears underneath their power armor?
The flight suit.
Yeah, like a flight suit. It was just a small hole, so I didn't think the bullet went into him. I thought it just grazed him. But apparently it went in through that hole and probably through part of his arm. So he's losing a lot of blood. So they start walking together. She's supporting him. She rewraps the bandage as more of, not a tourniquet, but tries to staunch the bleeding. And as they walk away, you see a little bit of blood dripping from his arm still bleeding despite being wrapped. They're looking for some place where she can find help. And they come up to this building, which has got a Vault-Tec symbol on it and Hawthorne Labs. Maximus is, of course, suspicious immediately. He's been taught not to trust Vault-Tec on the outside. Also, when he said, I thought it was filled with monsters, do you think that has to do with the fact that there is a rumor that what happened with Shady Sands was caused by Vault-Tec? Or do you think it's because of just hearing about the experiments that have happened in different vaults, maybe through rumor? Or
I hadn't even considered those. I just sort of assumed that they hadn't really experienced very many people from vaults, which I guess, as we know now in Vault 4, there has been some interactions, but I just sort of thought they didn't know, and sort of like it was one of those urban legends.
in history, anyone educated in the NCR would know about Vault City. Shady Sands was founded by people from Vault 15. So a lot of people would know about vaults and have that as part of their whole history. But I think it's Maximus being sheltered again. That's why I was wondering if maybe what changed in the last 15 years that he was growing up was more rumors about stuff from the vault. But I guess it's a case of his lifetime and him being young versus everything out there. Maximus has limited exposure, I guess. But she, of course, says, oh, wait, no, this is a great chance. And he doesn't want to go in there because a building like this that's still a pretty intact structure but a bit vacant looking. Probably is full of feral ghouls or something else.
And I think if you look off in the distance there, like in the background, right when they open up, as that camera pulls back, well, first off, you can see the big giant Vault-Tec logo on the ground that they're walking over. But sort of back in the distance, it looks like a standard vault entrance, almost that we would place at our camp in Fallout 76, like the really large giant.
I didn't get the round vault entrance, but that makes sense.
I didn't actually see the door, right? But it does, like, it's sort of that, like, slightly trapezoidal type of thing. It looks like the entrance in 76.
So I thought this was cool because we heard about Hawthorne Labs during the lead up to the show, and yet we never saw what they were or what they would be. And we'll learn more about them in a little bit. So Lucy's like, no, there could be something in there that could help you. So she goes in. Maximus, of course, doesn't want to. He's like, this is not a good idea. Don't do it. But she goes and he has to follow her. So he comes in behind her. And of course, he's not seeing her. The door is very abandoned, but we don't hear any ghouls or anything, at least. And he starts to search through. And he's following a pulsing light as he goes down. And there's a door going through into the further hallway.
And the light the light pulses down towards the direction they want you to go.
See, the developers planned ahead for the player to be able to find the location they were heading for. We don't need yellow paint in Fallout.
Yeah, they lead you right to that door.
Quest marker.
Yeah, exactly. So he opens it up to go through to the next hallway. But when he closes the door behind him, he can't open the next door because it's just painted on.
Great paint job too. Fooled me. I was like, whoa, hey.
I'm like, what's happening myself? And then it starts to blink, and do we see gas? And then the floor kind of drops, right? Like he just drop down?
Mm-hmm.
It's a trap. Then we are back over to the vault, not knowing what happened to these two. And Betty is explaining what her first edict was. And she says, what we're going to do, we need a resettling campaign. Half of us stay here in Vault 33, and half of us will go to Vault 32 to resettle. Because we need to keep the program going. We are America's future hope, and this is what will be best for us. And they'll probably end up getting people from Vault 31 too. She actually mentions, so before we do this, I think it's important that together we go and we get a look at our new home. Okay, and so she's trying to reinforce and kind of reset everybody's minds that the vaults are equal. The 33, 32, they're just the same, perfectly homey. So they're heading over, and Norm and Chet are looking at each other.
Like, what?
Hello, we were just in there. Nightmare fuel. We have mouse experiment videos. We have people eating each other. We have graffiti on the walls. You know.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that it's only been one day.
Yeah, it feels like one, right?
Well, because the song that comes busting out is what a difference a day makes.
Oh.
Yeah.
24 little hours.
Yeah, cleaned it all up.
So, right, they go in, and surprisingly, okay, the HM, the crops aren't growing, but it's looking a little cleaner. Things are looking okay. They start to walk in, and the music is swelling, and they enter the first hallway. And what before was a couple of bodies and bloodstains, now it's so bright.
Dark blinking lights.
Yeah, and now it's colorful. There are cute little patio furniture out in front of the vaults. It looks so homey. It looks as homey as Vault 33. And you're getting this little flash back and forth where kind of they see the hallway as it was when it was full of bodies. And now you see it with the furniture. Norm goes into the room where before there was the person who had maybe killed themselves with the fork in the toaster, electrocuted themselves. And now there's toast in the toaster. Like, aw.
That was what cracked me up. It's like, there's toast in the toaster? Like,
they thought of everything exactly like you would want it to be. So this is just very, very surprising. And Chet and Norm have no idea how this could be so different. Whereas the rest of the Vault Dwellers, because they don't know, they're like, oh, this is what they expected to see, right? Or it allays any fears they had about what might have happened there, and how bad it was, and what the Raiders did. And Betty admits they cleaned up. So Norm is walking into where the Overseer's room was. We're getting these various flashbacks, and where we had seen him in the chair before. And now the chair is empty. The desk is fine. The only thing off in this room, the first thing we've seen that's really off, is the computer. His terminal has been smashed. So whatever information was there that someone could access, they can't access now.
And that's the one that he had gone in and looked at.
Mm-hmm. So no one else is going to see what Norm said. And Norm can't dig deeper than he already did. because there's a good chance there was more on there than just that. There's a good chance
Yeah.
that any of these terminals have more incriminating evidence. And so he's just kind of beside himself how this is so changed. And Betty comes in behind him. He says, "Nice job cleaning up." And she knows what he means
Mhm.
because she knows that he was over here. And even if he didn't like know everything, even if he didn't get on that terminal, and if she doesn't know that, she knows that he saw the bodies. And she says, "The Raiders destroyed so much, but not our spirit." Basically acknowledging what he's saying, but also twisting it, like not acknowledging killing each other and what might have happened here.
Do you think it's, sorry to sidetrack a little bit, but
Please.
do we think it's maybe just all the people that was from Vault 31 that got together and cleaned it up that quickly? I mean, it couldn't have just been Betty by herself.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
It's a huge question, but I like the fact that Norm knows more happened than they're letting on. Betty knows Norm knows, and they're both, neither one are really saying it, but this is where I
It's a
really
little
feel
cat and
like,
mouse game almost.
yeah, I really feel like Betty is kind of grooming Norm. Like she's letting him find this stuff out because she is grooming him to be, I don't know if part of the cabal or learn the secret because he is Hank's son. And we don't know exactly, but I definitely think there's something going on there. She doesn't want to take any drastic action against him because he is Hank's son. And, she's known him all his life. Like, I don't know how let's get back to what you're talking about. Well, sorry. So how did they clean up Vault 32 so fast?
That's my best guess. It's like we know there's a few, like, that have come over for whatever reason, and maybe they're no longer overseer, but you got at least Steph and Betty that are from 31, and they could sort of keep a conspiracy, and so
There've
probably
gotta
others that
be-
were from 31.
Yeah, there's probably a handful of people from 31 in 33 currently. It can't just be them. Like, chances are there have been more that
Yeah.
have come back and forth. There are
And
also
we
some people in 31 could have come over too. What about robots?
What if
Go on.
what if one is just like got 100 robots stashed in there? They could saw up all those bodies and clean up and
Just dump them in the recycler.
Yeah, exactly. The body bio recycler.
At this point, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
We know
Now,
33 has a robot.
and they must
Yeah.
have several. I mean,
Yeah, you would think.
they have robots. 31 must have robots. People probably came over from 31. Some people from 31 in Vault 33 came over to help. It must be a group effort, but still, what a difference a day makes. That is a lot of change. I mean, do you think Steph was over there? Do you think Steph snuck over and helped clean up?
Yeah, new mother Steph. I assume that. I don't know.
All right.
I mean, if they had a bunch of handy bots, she wouldn't need her, but
It's obvious to me that Chet is playing dumb and he's
Mhm.
really a mastermind.
It's true.
It's
True.
Chet. Let's take back.
So at this point in the show, I just assumed there was some vast conspiracy that Betty knew about, along with Vault 31, and there's a whole crew of people over there that came over and cleaned up. Knowing what we later know, that seems less likely, but still must be robots or something. They were somehow prepared for this contingency. They must have stores and supplies to help survive this long and be able to restock and clean and do everything.
I did notice and think it was funny that as well as they had cleaned up everything else, and maybe they wouldn't notice because coming out of Vault 33, they raise the door and don't look back at the door. But when Vault 33, the door was closed, there were blood stains still all over. Just when this whole scene started, when they started going to 32, because
Yeah.
they exit out of Vault 33 to go to 32, and that's
Well, and also when they do the close up of the foosball table,
Mhm.
you see a little drop of blood on the head of one of the.
Blood on his head, right.
Yeah, not perfect. Like little clues. So continuing with the suspicion, Norm says, I was wondering what happened to my mother's Pip-Boy when she died. Just out of nowhere, apropos of nothing. And one assumes Betty knows the same thing that Norm learned, that it was used to get the Raiders in the vault, but we don't necessarily know if Betty knows that.
Foosball figures are for sale. I think I could get those for my foosball table.
The Vault Boys.
Little vault boys, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Of
We should
course,
sell
it'd be like $800 shipping.
mid-country even.
Somebody probably makes them, right?
Somebody's got it, especially
Yeah,
after
they will now. Yeah.
But Betty says, "Oh, your mother's Pip-Boy was buried with her." And Norm asks, "How do you know?" And she says, "Well, I buried her myself with your father."
I killed her.
So Betty buried Rose.
So lights just started flashing. You're like, wait a minute.
Hey,
They don't bury people in the vault.
Right? How do they? We know that like the dead bodies, they
toss them in the
recycled.
recycler.
See, I feel like maybe like the actual, most of the dwellers,
You never, ever, ever in any game,
you
in
don't.
anything,
Yes.
you never see, there's no cemeteries.
I thought maybe they like cremated them and they put the ashes in a bunch of little, like little vaults, like a little, I was calling it a
Yeah.
morgue, whatever you call the
Yeah.
area with a bunch of boxes where they'd all be saved.
What do you think
Yeah.
those bobbleheads? They're just compressed ash. I mean,
Is it possible some people get buried like where they grow all the crops, like all that dirt they have there? Like there is an area that they get to, they have access to where they can bury people?
I mean, there's certainly places that people could be buried,
Mm-hmm.
but as a rule, there isn't a place where people are buried.
Another suspicious comment from Betty. Someone gets a Pip Boy when they're a child that probably belonged to somebody else before, and they're reprogrammed and refurbished, right? Waste not,
Yeah.
want not in a vault.
Yeah. It's not like they're
Very
making new ones.
Interesting. I'm surprised Norm didn't ask more about that. Maybe he did, but we don't know because we cut away. And back to Lucy and Maximus, and they are laying on gurneys. And oh no, what have they gotten themselves into? Some kind of experiment? Super mutants? What? But you see Lucy starting to wake up and look over and sees Maximus down there. And she slowly gets up and looks over the window. And Maximus is following her. And, as he wakes up and says, where are we? And Lucy says, we're in the best place in the world. And that's when you get a view of the window and you see people in their vault suits walking back and forth. Like, we're in the best place in the world. We're in a vault. The mystery deepens. We don't know what vault they're in. We don't know where they are. But yeah, it looks like it's a full, happy, and healthy vault they're in. But they're currently in holding, which immediately made me suspicious.
so
Are they in holding?
Yeah, they're in a little quarantine room.
Okay.
With
It
a
looked. I
couple of
thought they were just
gurneys.
like it did seem odd, but I thought they were just like in a corridor.
It's
hanging
right
out
outside
in
the
hallway.
trap door. You see the sign on the wall, caution, falling objects.
Falling objects. That's great.
One of the hard things about doing this, after having watched it all the way through once,
is knowing what we know.
yeah, we know stuff,
know it.
but we know that we're not supposed to know.
Yeah.
No Johnny Cash this episode. A lot of Brotherhood. No Johnny Cash.
Right. I mean, you played Fallout 1. Is Shady Sands in Fallout 1, though?
Yeah.
It is. So this is taking place mostly in Los Angeles, right? But isn't Shady Sands in Fallout like how far is Death Valley? Isn't it like closer to like Nevada and stuff?
Yeah. So the area that we're in, for the most part, in Fallout 1 at the start of the game, when you get to Shady Sands, is Central California. So it's about, probably 200 miles from LA.
Okay, Shady Sands.
Yeah, so that was one of the hullabaloos.
Okay.
About this whole thing was
discrepancy.
that they relocated Shady Sands to LA.
Yeah, the location was way off. I have a theory on that. Did you guys discuss? Sorry, I stepped away from it. Did you guys discuss what your theories were on that?
No, we were
just
taking bets on how long it would take you to get
jabbering.
Maybe we'll get into it a little bit more next episode when we start seeing a few dates and a little bit more info on Shady Sands. But yeah, even though it moved, I think maybe the city was moved, or at least the name of the city was moved due to some circumstances. Hopefully, they explain it. They may not. It may have just been taking a liberty. Because like even between Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, while Shady Sands was generally the same area, it seemed to move a little bit west in Fallout 2, right? Like it was the same general area, but it moved a little west. But it's still nowhere's near LA. You still have the hub and Junktown and all that in between. Isn't Necropolis identified as Bakersfield, but on the wrong side of the hub? Like in reality, Bakersfield would be a little bit west of where the hub was. And in the game, when you're walking, it's a little bit east in the map. Anyhow, that's the end of the episode. Do you guys have any more thoughts on anything we saw you wanted to bring up?
No, it's just that little outro scene as the montage, as the camera pulls out. It starts out, you're just looking at a library, a school book in a locker at the Shady Sands Elementary School, and you pull back and you see the school bus and all that. And so you sort of see the devastated city with the giant crater in the background.
And interestingly, on the dates in the library book, if you stop and you pause there and you zoom in on the dates, I don't remember when the first date was. I feel like it was 21 something, but the last date that's listed on there was, I think, November 2276. I think there's about 12, maybe 13 dates on it. It ranges from around 2140 something, which actually in the first game, Shady Sands was founded. Isn't that even when the sign said?
Yeah, well, I think it was 2142. Yeah, on the sign in the
2142.
earlier.
Okay, that would all make sense. That was a really cool little montage zooming out. One thing we didn't mention, Lucy's finger was still, when they were raising the hands above their head, you still see Lucy's kind of discolored, like messed up finger that's been attached. But at least
I didn't know whether that's because circulation still wasn't good or if that was a finger from a different race of a.
Yeah, I think it was a dead finger.
Can she wiggle it? Have we seen it move?
Yeah, she can move it. It's just not in good shape. It wasn't necrotic, but yeah.
No, that coloring says otherwise.
It does. Well, I enjoyed this one. This was the episode that had the most revelations for me about what's going on in the vault and really got me excited. We had some of that last episode. Even more this episode. I like the vault politics and the suspicion and the dynamic. This is where I'm feeling like that vault tech mystery at its best, which is also something the showrunners are kind of known for. You expect that where's the twist? Where's the mystery? You get in Westworld, Point of Interest. There are other shows like that where there's always more going on and a central mystery, and you get it in spades with what is Vault Tech going up to, what's actually happening in the vault. I really like Maximus and Lucy together. Definitely.
Not as much as Thaddeus and Maximus, but that's
No,
okay.
those two as bros are great. They are really funny.
I cannot allow myself to like Maximus.
That's fair.
I'm in the same boat.
Oh man.
I've seen some who actually say that Maximus is one of their favorite characters because they feel he's
I've seen that.
well done. In that he's
dumb.
He's a good actor, but he's making his own trouble more often than not. And maybe there's a lot going on that doesn't come out. It's all like this subtle expressions on his face. I think I said early on that I feel like he's been so abused his life in a lot of ways by life that he doesn't trust that he's ever going to say or do the right thing. And then he doesn't say or do the right thing most of the time.
But he proves himself right.
Mm-hmm. Whereas Lucy, eminently likable. Thaddeus turned out to be very likable. Norm, Chet, all of them. The Ghoul, people like him as a character, even if he's a despicable human at this point. But you get that point of identification with the path. Maximus, you're right. It's hard. And I mean, we all know you have a thing about the Brotherhood anyway.
That my love for
Prejudice.
them.
Your undying love for them. And
my positive bias.
This version of the Brotherhood is also harsher than average. It's bad as Fallout 4 Brotherhood in a lot of ways, but kind of worse too. You know?
Fallout 1, they seemed way more religious, and I think these guys seemed like kind of a branch of in that direction.
Yeah, they're going back to the classic Brotherhood mixed with 4.
Yeah. Right.
Well, awesome, you guys. Thank you, Ray, Andrew, and Will, for discussing this episode. And thank you again, listeners, for joining us. We appreciate you tuning into Vault Talk for these recaps and discussions. This has been episode 5, The Past. And to answer your question, Andrew, next week we'll be talking about episode 6, The Trap. Which I assume that's what has happened with Lucy and Maximus falling into a trap. We'll find out. As a reminder, you can listen to our regular show, The Fallout Feed, on podcast services everywhere. So tune into us there. And until next time, we'll see you in the California Wasteland.